Hello and welcome to another episode of Saddleback Arts Live at Home. I'm Scott Farthing. I'm the Interim Dean of Fine Arts and Media Technology here at Saddleback College. Today we have Dr. Ariel Alexander, who's co-chair of the music department and director of our commercial music, music technology, and music business program here at the college. Ariel has had a really wonderful career. She's been here with us for about 8 years, but she's also a businesswoman and an arranger and a composer, and she just does so many different things. But today her presentation is about digital music. Dr. Alexander.
Thank you. Super happy to be here tonight. Most of my career and what I do for fun centers around something called digital music production. And most people have no idea what that actually means. So today I'm going to be giving you a tour into my process and into my screen so you can see what I do and how I actually make music. Now, one really cool thing about music production is that in addition to serving as a songwriter where I create melodies and harmonies and drum beats, I also serve as an instrument creator. Let me say that one more time. So in addition to working as a songwriter, music producers also create instruments. We design instruments. So we're constantly taking little pieces of audio and we're manipulating them and we're transforming them until they sound like music. Now what I'm going to do for you today is going to show you how that audio that I've taken, that I've been surrounded with during the quarantine. I'm going to take this audio and I'm going to transform it into a piece of music. Now, I gave a lot of thought into what piece of music I would actually write for you tonight. And at the same time, it's no secret that right now we're surrounded by sadness and pain and fighting. So I thought, you know what? What the world needs now is something really beautiful. So I'm going to take all of these disparate pieces of audio, I'm going to put them together into what I hope you think is a beautiful piece of music. I thought of the song Imagine by John Lennon, and I called up one of my former students, Jessica Gordon, and I said, hey Jessica, can you record just this one verse of Imagine for me? And she did, and she sent it back to me. So today we're going to be writing the music that's going to frame that verse of Imagine. Now, before I get started, if you have headphones, I would grab them so that you can hear what I'm doing here in the best quality. So, let me show you the audio that I collected. This first one is something that's probably really familiar to all the parents out there. Mommy! 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 That's my kid. Next piece of audio.
Probably in a week, probably.
Dr. Anthony Fauci. Next piece of audio, our great Dr. Farthing.
I'm Dr. Scott Farthing.
Next, our president.
Because I think it's good. I've heard a lot of good stories.
And finally, some random sounds I collected from around my house. So here is my dryer closing. Here is one of the 15 Diet Cokes I drink a day opening. And here is a pair of car keys, although I don't go anywhere. Okay? So let's get started. One by one, we're going to transform each of these pieces of audio into an instrument. So let's start with this mommy here. Now, you'll notice that right here you should be able to see the two parts of the mommy. Right here is the ma, and right here is the me. And I can actually play this. I can actually play this on my keyboard, okay? Now, when I think about making this into an instrument, the first thing I want to do is smooth it out by taking off that first part. So I'm going to cut off the ma of the mommy, and we'll check it out. Okay, better. The next thing I want to do is I want to take away that E, that really annoying part, okay? And I'm going to do that with something called a filter. And I'm going to take this filter and I'm going to take out those really annoying high frequencies until we have the more pleasant ones left. Okay? And finally, finally, I think I'm gonna grab a delay, 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 right? Stick it on there. Okay? And for now, that's good enough, okay? There's my mommy instrument. Next, let's move on to Dr. Fauci. Now, I don't know about you guys, but the very first time I heard Dr. Fauci, I was like, oh my gosh, that guy would make a great bass. I love his voice. And just like the mommy clip, I can take Dr. Fauci and I can play him on the keyboard. Okay? Now, if we look at this sentence of Dr. Fauci's, let's see. Whoops.
Really quite soon.
I want to take just the word soon. So I'm going to zoom, 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 zoom.
Soon, 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 soon.
Okay? And that provides a beautiful growl for my bass.
Soon, soon.
Okay? Now, the problem with Dr. Fauci is he doesn't have enough pitch material in his voice, so I'm cheating just a little bit, but he'll still be there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a real bass sounding instrument. I'm going to combine it with Dr. Fauci. So now, what you guys are hearing is part Fauci. He's providing that growl that I love him for, but we also hear a little bit of a real bass. Okay? And there is our Dr. Fauci. Let's see. We're going to move on to our president. Now, like everyone else, I can play him on the keyboard.
They come up with some. They come up with some.
Okay? And we're going to do a trick here where I zoom in and in and in. And I'm going to take smaller and smaller pieces of trump. And we're not talking about a second. We're talking about a very, very, very small piece. And what happens when you zoom in and loop it, it actually becomes an instrument. Right? It sounds like an organ or a keyboard. And just like that, we can make him into something that sounds like an instrument. Okay? The other thing, let's see. I'm going to throw a echo on our great president here. Our Trump keyboard. Dr. Farthing, I had so much trouble with yours.
I'm Dr. Scott Farthing.
I could not figure out a great instrument to make out of Dr. Farthing. But what I could do is when he says, I am Dr. Scott, I was able to isolate that S. And I'm going to make it into a beautiful shaker. Okay? And then finally, we have these three clips, the dryer, the soda, the keys. I don't have to do anything with those. Those are ready to go. So we have our quarantine band. We've got our mommy keyboard. We've got our Fauci bass. We've got our Trump keyboard. We've got these drum sounds, and we've got our Farthing shaker. And we are ready to compose some music. Let's see here. All right. Now, remember, I got this a cappella from my student Jessica, and it sounds like this.
Imagine no possessions.
Okay? And I'm going to write to that a cappella. So the first thing I'm going to start out with are these drums. Now, remember, I chose a dryer, I chose a soda can, I chose my keys, and I chose the Farthing shaker. And it's not an accident that I chose these particular sounds. When you shut a dryer, it sounds like a kick drum or a bass drum. This soda can reminds me of a snare drum or maybe a clap. And these keys we're going to use more as a percussive effect, okay? So I'm going to draw in some drums right now. Let's see. So I'm going to start out with my pretend kick drum. Oops. Going to the soda can, back to the kick drum, back from the kick drum to the soda can. Okay? So there's the very start to my drums. I'm going to add the keys right in the middle here. And Dr. Farthing is so important that he gets to play on every single beat. So I'm drawing him in on every beat, okay? Now, let's listen to what my drums sound like, and we'll play it with a little bit of the a cappella.
I wonder if you care. No need for greed or hunger.
Okay, we are moving on to our Fauci bass. Okay, so when I record bass, I'm just gonna layer it on top of the other stuff I have, all right? So I'm gonna press record and record on top of what I've got going on.
Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you care. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world you.
Fauci bass, done. Let's move on to our mommy keyboard. All right, let's add this in. Recording now.
Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you care. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world you.
And we have one more thing to add, which is our president. All right, and I'm going to record the final part.
Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you care. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world you.
All right, that is all the parts. I'm gonna play it for you one more time. Our quarantine band.
Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you care. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world you.
All right, thank you for joining me on this composition journey.
That was so cool to
Thank you.
watch. So, can I ask you a couple questions?
Yeah.
All right, you made that look insanely easy. Okay, now it is not easy because you have. I'm sitting there thinking about all of the studying and the degrees you have. So let's just recap a little bit. You have an undergraduate degree from one of the best music schools in the world, Indiana University. Then you come to LA to do graduate work in music at USC. While you're at USC, you start a business that becomes really successful called Mobile Rockstar, where you record kids and mix it. I mean, it was a brilliant business model. This is all while you're doing graduate school.
Yeah.
You get your master's and your doctorate, and then you have an immense amount of training. What is the training that you have had that has been most meaningful that allows you to do that? You just created an entire band out of random sounds. How did you learn to do that?
Well, look, I didn't start doing the technology part of my musical career until maybe I was 25. But all the jazz knowledge, the fact that I'd been taking piano since I was 3, and my whole jazz education, it kind of just accumulates into this. So whether my instrument is the saxophone or whether my instrument is the computer, I kind of see it as all the same, right? I'm the same musician. My musicality is coming out, and it's just coming out in a different way. So the technical stuff, you have to learn, you have to study. I do what everybody else does, and I take lessons, still do. But the musicality, the ability to create, melodies and harmonies and bass line, that comes from years and years and years of being a jazz musician, probably.
And the discipline of learning all of that and starting piano at 3 and being in the intense environments of education. So it's the culmination of all of that work.
For sure.
And the idea that you're constantly learning and applying, because you said it to me once a long time ago, technology is here to stay, right? And embracing that in our music education. So I know that many schools have been fighting having commercial music as part of an academic concentration, and that's changing. Is it changing quickly, and how is it changing, and are schools starting to open up more so to this kind of music?
Yes and no. So again, I come from this jazz background, and the bias from traditional or classical musicians against jazz was pretty prevalent, right? And I think it still is, but it's jazz is more accepted, academically. But there's still a bias against commercial music. I don't know why. Perhaps because it's simple, oftentimes simple. But these programs are growing, and where I see the most amount of growth and I see the coolest programs are actually in high schools.
Yeah.
High schools around the country are creating these beautiful music technology and commercial music and rock programs. And that's filtered. Now community colleges are doing it. And honestly, our universities are slow to catch on.
Right.
But so it kind of goes from the ground up. But I know within 5 years there will be tech programs and commercial music programs all over. It's just a little bit slow to gain momentum.
But students here, your classes are the first to fill. Like students want this information because they identify it, so quickly. They want to be part of that world, right?
Yeah, and my students, a lot of them are kind of like the forgotten musicians. Because if you think about a lot of high schools, not the ones around here necessarily, but students who write stuff on their computer, if they're not a part of band or orchestra or choir, they're not part of their school's music program. So they don't really consider music education. So most of my students have not come up through academic music education. They didn't participate in that stuff in their high schools. So this is the first time it's kind of been codified in this academic way for them.
And I think one of the important things that you do, one of the many important things, is that you're an example of, okay, you have to be a really good musician. You have to have the solid theory training. You have to have all of these things, but you can still, this is as legitimate as if I'm playing a classical piece, if I'm playing Beethoven, right? There is as much importance and as much value to that. And so, and all of your experience, when a student comes to you and they say, I want to do this. I want to make this music. What is the advice you give them?
There's career advice. I mean, in the thing I'm telling students most is to have this multi-dimensional career. So even some of the most successful touring musicians I know do 5 other things for money. So you need to have a lot of skills, and you need to take away your genre bias. If you're going to create music on your computer, 85% of the time you might be editing podcasts. Maybe 10% of the time you'll be writing commercials, and then maybe for a very small amount of time you'll actually be performing, quote, your music. So I think getting rid of the genre bias and just seeing yourself as, again, a multi-dimensional person who can fulfill a bunch of different roles, because as someone who wants to make a living like this, you're going to have to patch all of these together to make a living. And then music-wise, it takes a lot of work. The old 10,000 hours thing, I truly believe it. To get good, you have to practice so much. And I'm lucky that I started practicing maybe for real when I was 13 or 14,
right.
Packed in a lot of hours. So there's a lot of, less hoping and more doing. Start playing around. You should be doing this all day, every day.
Say that one more time. Less hoping and more doing.
Less hoping, more doing. So, I want to be really good at whatever it is. Okay, we can want, but what are you doing?
And I think that's the other, knowing you professionally in the way that I do, I know that you work from 5 in the morning until midnight, 1 o'clock. I mean, you're always creating, and I know some of the deadlines, you'll get up and teach all day, and then you'll write these things, and then you get a phone call to do X project for X television show that's due at 7 o'clock the next morning, and it's 10 o'clock at night. You are the most disciplined and tenacious professional musician I know.
Thank you.
And how do you tell your students that is just what the expectation of the business is? How do you do that?
I don't demonstrate the burnout thing because I don't want them to be burnout,
No.
But I do demonstrate how systematically I work. I also do this exercise that I still do today, where I do a huge timeline, across a whiteboard, and I write what I want to be doing, 2 months, 6 months, 1 year, 5 year from now. And I'll do it in all facets of my life, so that I can be really systematic and disciplined about what I need to do today to get where I'm going to be there. So I teach them, how to set goals, how to, break goals down into manageable pieces, and work on one thing at a time so it's not so overwhelming.
Because what you do and the successes that you have, none of it happens by accident. And it didn't happen by hoping and wishing. You really have worked yourself. I mean, you've just worked so hard to make it happen.
Yeah, and the other thing you have to realize is the payoff is never initial. The payoff is never, the big call that I'd been waiting for, if that's, the biggest call that changed the direction of my career, it came from somebody that I did a project for 10 years earlier.
Wow.
So I always stress to my students, your career has started. You're working now. So everything you do, every single person you're working for, you're building a reputation. And someone that I did something for 10 years prior, I did a really good job at, and that person called me when he was now doing a project with a really well-known artist. It takes forever but you kind of have to trust the process and just keep working and working and working.
Well, Ariel, thank you for today, and
Thank
thank
you.
you for what you bring to the students. It's remarkable what you represent and what you do and how you teach. You are an incredibly gifted teacher and a gifted musician. So
Thank you so much.
thank
Thanks for
you.
having me.
And next week we will be learning about ceramics and how are we doing ceramics during quarantine. Our art professor Laura Haight will be with us next week, and I look forward to getting my hands a little dirty with some clay. So thank you all for joining us today, and have a good week.